Hey guys, tonight we're going to talk about something that was equal parts mind-numbing boredom and absolute terror. We're going to explore what it was like to be a crew member on an American B-17 bomber during World War II, flying long, freezing missions deep into enemy territory. It's a story of incredible endurance, questionable coffee, and the constant, dull drone of four massive engines carrying you toward a place you really don't want to go. And hey, if you actually enjoy what I do here, maybe consider a like or a subscribe. It really does help the channel find other people who need a bit of boring history to help them drift off. I'm always fascinated to see where everyone is listening from, so if you feel like it, drop a comment with your city and what time it is. Seeing people falling asleep to this all over the world at all hours is still one of the coolest things about doing this. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing you register is not a sound, but a feeling. It is the cold. It is a profound and invasive cold that seems to possess a life and a will of its own. This is not the crisp, clean, invigorating cold of a bright winter morning back home. This is a damp, heavy, metallic cold, the kind that feels as if it is emanating from the very earth itself, creeping silently up through the four thin metal legs of your cot, infiltrating the lumpy mattress, and settling deep into the marrow of your bones. You have just woken up, but you feel as if you have been stored overnight in a refrigerator. When you finally manage to draw a breath and exhale, it forms a small, ghostly plume in the dim air, a visible testament to the chill that has taken hold of the room. It is 3:30 in the morning, in the dead of winter, 1943, and you are inside a Nissen hut on an American bomber base, planted unceremoniously in the flat, damp, and perpetually grey landscape of East Anglia, England. The reason you are awake, the reason this cold has been allowed to so thoroughly invade your brief and inadequate sleep, is a young, fresh-faced corporal. He looks no older than 18, with a face that should be delivering newspapers back in Ohio, but instead, he has been tasked with the unwelcome duty of being the harbinger of a mission day. He didn't just wake you, he seemed to assault the very concept of sleep itself. With a single, decisive flick of a switch, he ignited the single, naked, 100-watt bulb that hangs from a long, cloth-covered wire in the center of the hut's curved ceiling. The light it casts is a harsh, unforgiving, jaundiced yellow, illuminating every miserable detail of your temporary home. It glints off the curved, corrugated metal walls, making the beads of condensation that coat their entire surface sparkle like a sad and miserable kind of diamond. After banishing the darkness, he walked the length of the long hut, not shouting, but speaking in a loud, insistent, monotone voice that was somehow more grating than a yell. "Rise and shine, gentlemen. Briefing in an hour. It's a mission day." A low groan escapes your lips, a sound that is immediately echoed by 19 other men scattered throughout the hut. It is a communal sound, a chorus of shared resignation and protest against the inevitable cycle of your existence here. You decide to roll over, a slow, deliberate movement that sends a cascade of complaints rippling through your body. Your cot, a simple, foldable metal frame with a grid of interwoven springs, protests your slight shift in weight with a series of loud, metallic shrieks and groans, as if it, too, is reluctant to begin the day's grim proceedings. The mattress beneath you is a masterwork of military-grade discomfort. It is thin, perhaps 3 inches at its thickest point, and it is filled with a compressed, unevenly distributed material that you have long suspected is straw, though you have never had the courage to perform the exploratory surgery required to confirm your hypothesis. Over the months you have slept on it, Your body has slowly but surely created a shallow depression in its center, a personalized valley of lumps that is uniquely your own. You pull the blanket tighter around your shoulders, an instinctive, futile gesture against the pervasive chill. The blanket is a single layer of coarse, army-issue wool. It is scratchy against your skin and carries the permanent, layered scent of its history, a foundation of dampness from the English air, notes of stale cigarette smoke from countless pre-mission anxieties, and the faint, lingering, almost ghostly odor of all the other young men who have slept, sweated, and worried beneath its inadequate protection before you. For a long, luxurious moment, you simply lie there, perfectly still, listening to the familiar symphony of the hut reluctantly coming to life. 20 men, all groaning, all cursing softly under their breath, all beginning the slow, painful process of swinging their legs over the sides of their respective cots. You hear the scrape of boots on the bare concrete floor, a sound that is both rough and hollow. You hear the rustle of clothes being pulled on, the fabric stiff and cold. You hear a few hacking coughs, a wet, rattling sound that has been passed around the squadron for weeks, a persistent souvenir of the English winter. This is the sound of a mission day beginning. Your first truly conscious thought, the first coherent idea to emerge from the fog of sleep, is not about patriotism, or your duty to your country, or even about the enemy you will soon be flying to meet. It is a thought that is much simpler, much more immediate and personal. It is a quiet, internal debate, a serious consideration of whether you can get away with wearing yesterday's socks. The thought is tempting. The idea of not having to expose your feet to the frigid air, of saving the clean pair for tomorrow, is deeply appealing. But you dismiss the notion almost as quickly as it appears. You have made that mistake before. The memory of the misery of damp, cold feet on a 10-hour flight, the feeling of the cold slowly seeping into your boots, turning your toes into numb, unresponsive blocks of ice, is a special kind of torture you would rather avoid. With a final, resigned sigh, you push yourself into a sitting position. Your spine cracks in a few places, a series of small, sharp pops that seem to protest the movement. You feel the cold air of the hut on your chest and back as the blanket pulls around your waist. You sit there for a moment, on the edge of the squeaking cot, letting your eyes adjust to the harsh, yellow light. You feel around in the dark, cold space beneath your cot, your fingers searching for the familiar, rough wood of your footlocker. Your movements are slow, your joints stiff not just from the cold, but from the lingering, deep-seated fatigue of the last mission, which was only 2 days ago. They don't give you much time to recover. The pressure from high command is relentless. The bombing campaign is ramping up, and your bodies are the fuel that feeds the great machine of war. Your fingers find the cold, metal latch of the footlocker. You lift the lid, the hinges groaning in protest. A faint, musty smell, the scent of your own confined life, rises to meet you. You pull on your clothes in the dim, dreary light, a ritual performed almost entirely by feel. First comes the long underwear, a two-piece cotton garment that was once soft but is now thin and worn, having lost most of its elasticity. It sags in unfortunate places and does little to ward off the cold, but it is a required layer. Then comes the standard olive drab wool shirt and trousers. The fabric feels rough and scratchy against your skin, and you can already tell that it's one of those days where every single seam is going to find a way to chafe and irritate you over the long hours ahead. You pull on your socks, the clean, dry pair you had the foresight to save. The simple act of pulling a dry, warmish sock over a cold foot is a moment of profound, almost shocking pleasure. It is a small victory against the overwhelming misery of the morning. Finally, you reach for your heavy leather boots. They are stiff with cold, and the leather feels hard and unyielding. You shove your feet into them and begin the laborious process of lacing them up. Your fingers are already numb, making the simple task of threading the laces through the eyelets a clumsy, frustrating affair. You pull the laces tight, the leather creaking in protest, securing your feet in what will be their prisons for the next 12 to 14 hours. Around you, the other men are engaged in the same silent, grim ballet of preparation. Not much is said. There is no cheerful morning banter, no jokes or stories exchanged on a mission day. There is only a quiet, shared understanding of what is to come, a collective tension that hangs in the cold air like a physical presence. You know these men, this crew, better than you know your own brothers. You know their habits, their fears, their small, private rituals. You know that Steve, the pilot, a calm and steady presence from Pennsylvania, is at this very moment tapping the small, framed picture of his wife that sits on his footlocker. A silent promise to return. You know that Charlie, the co-pilot, a cheerful kid from Brooklyn, will soon begin to whistle, a tuneless, slightly off-key melody that is his nervous tick, a habit that drives everyone on the crew half crazy but that no one would ever dream of telling him to stop, because it is as much a part of the pre-mission ritual as the bad coffee. You know that Mike, the navigator, a serious, bespectacled young man from Boston, will already be running through his initial calculations in his head, his face a mask of intense concentration. The weight of getting 10 men to a precise point hundreds of miles away and back again already settling on his shoulders. You are the bald turret gunner. It is a title that sounds almost comical, but the reality of the job is anything but. You are the man who will spend the mission curled up in a transparent plastic and metal sphere, a tiny, fragile bubble slung underneath the belly of the massive bomber. It is arguably the worst, most terrifying job on the plane. It is claustrophobic, it is isolating, and it is terrifyingly, completely exposed. But you have trained yourself not to dwell on it. Thinking too much about what could happen, about the flak and the fighters and the 5-mile drop beneath you, is a luxury you cannot afford. So you focus on the next small, manageable task. Lacing your boots, buttoning your shirt, finding your cap, one thing at a time. That is how you get through the morning. That is how you get through the day. Once you are dressed in your basic uniform, you join the silent, shuffling procession of men making their way out of the hut and into the pre-dawn gloom. The air outside hits you like a physical blow. It is even colder than it was inside, and a light, misty rain, more of a heavy fog than a proper rain, is falling. It makes the muddy ground of the base slick and treacherous underfoot. You have to watch your step to keep from slipping and falling in the thick, clinging mud. The base itself is a sprawling, temporary-looking place, a city of mud and metal that has been hastily erected in the middle of the English countryside. There are dozens of identical, curved-roof Nissen huts, a few larger, more permanent-looking administrative buildings, and the massive, cavernous hangars where the bombers are kept. All of it is connected by a network of cracked concrete paths and muddy tracks that turn into small rivers when the rain is heavy. In the distance, through the gray mist, you can hear the first stirrings of the ground crews, the sharp, metallic clank of tools on metal, the low, guttural rumble of a fuel truck engine coughing to life. The air smells of wet earth, of diesel fumes, and of the ubiquitous coal smoke that pours from the chimneys of every building, creating a permanent, gritty haze that coats everything and gets into your lungs. The mess hall is a short, miserable walk away. It is another long, low building, and it is already filled with hundreds of men from the other squadrons in your bomb group. The moment you step inside, you are hit by a wave of sound and smell. The sound is the clatter of metal trays on wooden tables, the scrape of benches on the concrete floor, and the low, continuous murmur of hundreds of anxious voices. The air inside is thick and heavy, a rich stew of smells, the scent of weak, boiling coffee, the sharp, greasy smell of frying bacon, and the underlying, pervasive odor of hundreds of young men, a mixture of sweat, wet wool, and fear. You grab a metal tray and a mug and get in line, shuffling forward with the slow, resigned pace of a condemned man. The breakfast, when you finally get to the front of the line, is the same as it is on every mission morning, a culinary disaster designed to be produced in mass quantities with minimal effort. There are the powdered eggs, which have a strange, slightly green tint and the texture of wet sawdust. There are a couple of rashers of bacon, so thin and greasy that they are almost translucent. There are 2 slices of toast that have been waved in the general direction of a heat source but remain stubbornly pale and limp. And there is a mug of a dark, bitter liquid that is generously referred to as coffee. You navigate through the crowded tables and find your crew, huddled together at your usual spot in a far corner. The 10 of you occupy a small island of familiar faces in a sea of strangers. Some of the men are forcing down the food, chewing mechanically, their eyes distant. They know they will need the energy later, that an empty stomach makes the altitude sickness and the cold that much worse. Others, like you, just push the food around their plates with a fork, their stomachs too tight with anxiety to accept anything solid. Charlie, the co-pilot, is whistling his annoying little tune, a jaunty, nonsensical melody that is completely at odds with the grim atmosphere of the room. Mike the navigator is staring intently into his coffee cup, as if he is trying to divine the future from the dark, swirling liquid. Steve, the pilot and aircraft commander, is attempting to project an air of confidence, a task at which he is only partially successful. "It'll be a milk run today, boys," he says, his voice a little too loud, a little too cheerful. "A quick trip over the channel, drop a few eggs on a submarine pen on the French coast, and we'll be back in time for tea and medals." Everyone at the table nods, a series of small, jerky movements. But no one believes him. The briefings haven't happened yet, so no one officially knows the target. But the sheer scale of the activity on the base this morning, the number of planes being fueled and armed, the palpable sense of urgency in the air, all of it points to one thing. It's not going to be a milk run. It's going to be a deep one. A deep penetration into the heart of the Reich. Probably Germany. Berlin, maybe. Or Schweinfurt. Or Regensburg. The names themselves are like a litany of dread. The thought sends a cold, hard knot tightening in your stomach. A knot that has nothing to do with the terrible food on your plate. You lift the heavy ceramic mug to your lips and take a long drink of the coffee. It's hot, at least, and the bitter, burnt taste is a familiar shock to your system. The caffeine provides a welcome, if temporary, jolt to your tired mind. You decide to attempt a bite of the eggs. You scoop a small amount onto your fork and lift it to your mouth. The texture is exactly as you remembered, gritty, pasty, and vaguely unpleasant. You chew it mechanically, your jaw working without any real input from your brain, and then you wash it down with another large gulp of coffee. You had to eat something. You know this, but every bite feels like an act of will. After the pretense of breakfast is over, it is time for the briefing. You all file out of the relative warmth of the mess hall and back into the cold, damp morning. You head toward another, larger Nissen hut, one designated specifically for mission briefings. This is the part of the morning where the abstract anxiety begins to solidify into concrete fear. The nervous energy in the air becomes almost a physical thing, a low hum that you can feel in your teeth. You see men walking with their shoulders hunched against the cold, their hands jammed deep into their pockets. You see cigarettes being lit, the small flames cupped carefully against the damp air, the men drawing the smoke deep into their lungs as if it were life itself. The briefing room is already crowded and filled with a thick haze of blue-gray cigarette smoke. The room is arranged like a small, primitive theater. Rows of simple, backless wooden benches face a small stage at the front. On the stage, dominating the space, is a large map of Western Europe, but its details are hidden, covered by a large, clean white sheet. This is the moment of revelation, the point of no return. The group commander, a full colonel with a stern, weathered face and eyes that look like they haven't seen a decent night's sleep in years, steps onto the stage. The low murmur of conversation that has been filling the room dies down instantly, replaced by a tense, expectant silence. "Good morning, gentlemen," he says, his voice flat, devoid of any emotion. It is the voice of a man who has done this too many times, who has sent too many young men out on journeys from which they did not return. He gives a short, sharp nod to an aide standing at the side of the stage. The aide steps forward and, with a single, practiced motion, pulls the white sheet away from the map. A collective sound, a low, soft groan of despair, ripples through the room. It is a sound you have heard before, a sound you have made yourself. Pinned to the map is a long, thin ribbon of red yarn. It begins at your base here in England. It stretches out over the grey expanse of the North Sea, crosses over the coastline of Holland, and then continues deep, deep into the industrial heartland of Germany. The ribbon ends at a city you have never heard of before, a place called Schweinfurt. The colonel begins to speak again, his voice a steady drone, but you are only half listening. Your eyes are fixed on that red ribbon. It looks so impossibly long, so thin and fragile, a delicate thread stretching over a vast and hostile continent. That is your path for the day. That is the tightrope you are expected to walk, 5 miles up in the sky, hoping against hope that it doesn't snap beneath you. The primary target, the colonel is saying, his words cutting through your thoughts, is the ball-bearing factories at Schweinfurt. He explains that these factories are critical to the German war machine, that they produce the precision bearings needed for everything from tank engines to aircraft instruments. Taking them out, he says, will shorten the war. He says this every time, no matter what the target is. It is meant to be motivational, to give you a sense of purpose, to justify the risks you are about to take. But to you, sitting on a hard wooden bench in a cold, smoky hut, it just sounds like a very good reason for the Germans to defend the place with everything they have. An intelligence officer, a young captain with a neat mustache and a pointer stick, takes the stage after the colonel. His job is to fill in the grim details of the journey represented by the red ribbon. He taps the map with the end of his stick, his movements precise and clinical. You can expect heavy flak concentrations beginning here, over the Dutch coast, he says, his voice calm and matter-of-fact. His stick taps a spot on the map that is circled in an angry, vibrant red. The flak will intensify as you approach the Ruhr Valley, here, and will be exceptionally heavy in the immediate vicinity of the target. He continues to tap at the map, and with each tap, another red circle appears in your mind's eye, another gauntlet you will have to run. The map, which was just a piece of paper a few minutes ago, is transforming into a landscape of death, a series of obstacles designed to kill you. Next, he moves on to the subject of enemy fighters. Luftwaffe fighter bases are located here, here, and here, he says, his stick dancing across the map, tapping at a series of locations circled in blue. They are, you note with a sinking feeling, conveniently located all along your route. You can expect to encounter elements of Jagdgeschwader 26, the Abbeville Boys, as you cross the coast. They are experienced, aggressive, and they have recently been equipped with the new Focke-Wulf 190. He pauses, letting the name sink in. The Focke-Wulf 190, the Butcher Bird, is a formidable opponent, faster and more heavily armed than the Messerschmitt 109s you are used to facing. He goes on to describe the new tactics the German pilots are using. They have learned that the B-17 is most vulnerable from the front. So they are pressing head-on attacks, flying directly into the teeth of your formation, firing their 20mm cannons straight into your cockpit. The image is terrifying. A fighter plane, its wings winking with cannon fire, growing larger and larger in your windscreen until it fills your entire world. Your mouth feels dry, as if it is full of dust. You lick your lips and taste the lingering bitterness of the morning's terrible coffee. Finally, the weather officer takes the stage. He is a cheerful, round-faced man who seems completely out of place in this grim proceeding. He talks about cloud cover, about wind speeds at various altitudes, about the potential for icing conditions as you climb. His report is a litany of meteorological misery. There will be a solid undercast for most of the flight, meaning you won't be able to see the ground, which makes navigation more difficult and eliminates any chance of finding a target of opportunity if the primary is obscured. He predicts strong headwinds on the way in, which will slow you down and make you a target for longer. And he warns of severe icing above 20,000 feet. Ice could form on your wings, disrupting the airflow and making the plane difficult to control. It could clog your engine intakes, causing them to sputter and fail. It is just one more thing to worry about, one more enemy to fight in the hostile environment of the upper atmosphere. When the main briefing is finally over, the large group of men breaks apart. The different crew members shuffle off to their own specialized briefings, smaller, more intimate sessions of dread. The navigators and bombardiers go to one room to study detailed maps and photographs of the target area. The pilots go to another to discuss flight plans, call signs, and emergency procedures. And the gunners, you included, are herded into a smaller, even smokier hut to get your own particular dose of bad news. The gunnery officer is a young first lieutenant who, you know for a fact, has never flown a single combat mission. He stands before you, trying to look authoritative, and repeats the same information you have heard 100 times before. He tells you about the estimated number of fighters you will face today, a number that seems to grow with each briefing. He reminds you of the importance of target identification, of not getting trigger happy and shooting at one of your own planes in the confusion of battle. He tells you to conserve your ammunition, to fire in short, controlled bursts, to make every bullet count. It is all sound advice, but it is advice you have already learned the hard way, through the brutal experience of actual combat. You just nod along, your mind already on the plane, on the freezing cold of the ball turret, on that long, thin, terrifying red ribbon of yarn. After the briefings, there is a sense of release, of finality. The waiting is over. The knowing is complete. Now, there is only the doing. You head to the equipment locker rooms to get your gear. This is where the transformation takes place, where you shed your identity as a simple soldier in a wool uniform and become something else entirely, a creature of high altitude, a component in a flying machine, encased in layers of specialized, life-sustaining equipment. The locker room is a scene of organized chaos. Men are shouting, laughing with a nervous energy, pulling on their cumbersome flight gear. The air smells of leather, sheepskin, and nervous sweat. First comes the electrically heated suit. It is a clumsy, one-piece garment, like a pair of long johns that has been cross-bred with an electric blanket. It is covered in a grid of thin wires that, in theory, will keep you from freezing to death at 30,000 feet. You plug it into an outlet on the plane, and a current flows through the wires, generating heat. That is the theory. The reality is that the suit is notoriously unreliable. The thin wires break easily. The connections are fragile. It often shorts out, leaving you with no heat at all. Or, even worse, it will develop hot spots, areas where the wires have bunched together, creating a searing, painful heat in one small area while the rest of your body freezes. You have had missions where a spot on your back felt like it was on fire, while your feet were so cold you were convinced they had fallen off. But you wear it because the alternative is certain frostbite. Over the heated suit, you pull on your standard flight suit, a heavy, olive-drab coverall. And over that, you don your heavy, sheepskin-lined leather jacket and trousers. The A2 jacket and pants are the iconic image of the American bomber crewman, but the reality of wearing them is far from glamorous. They are incredibly warm, but they are also incredibly bulky and stiff. The leather is thick and unyielding, and the sheepskin lining is dense and heavy. Just walking feels like you are wading through thick mud. Bending your arms or legs requires a conscious effort. You feel less like a warrior and more like a walking, leather-clad mattress. Then come the boots. They are massive, clumsy things, also lined with thick sheepskin and, like the suit, electrically heated. They feel like you have strapped small boats to your feet, and they make your movements even more awkward. Next, you struggle into your flak vest. It is a heavy, awkward piece of body armor, filled with overlapping steel plates, and it feels like it is made of solid lead. It offers some protection against shrapnel from exploding flak shells, but it also restricts your movement and adds another 20 pounds to your already burdened frame. You place the flak helmet on your head. It is just a standard steel pot, but with extra leather flaps that hang down to cover your ears and the back of your neck. It won't stop a direct hit from a cannon shell, but it might deflect a piece of shrapnel, and that might be the difference between life and death. You then have to untangle and put on your parachute harness, a confusing, frustrating web of canvas straps and metal buckles that has to be worn just right. You have practiced putting it on dozens of times, but it is still a clumsy process, especially with your cold, stiff fingers. The parachute itself, the pack containing the life-saving silk canopy, is not worn in the plane. It is too bulky. Instead, it is placed near your station, and you have to clip it onto your harness before you bail out. This is another small, terrifying detail you try not to think about. The idea of fumbling with those clips in a spinning, burning airplane is the stuff of nightmares. Over the harness goes your Mae West life preserver, a bright yellow inflatable vest that you will need if you have to ditch in the cold, gray waters of the North Sea. Finally, the last piece of equipment, your oxygen mask. It is a heavy, rubbery thing that covers your nose and mouth, and it smells of stale rubber and the faint, antiseptic scent of the cleaning solution used on it. You check it carefully, stretching the rubber, examining the hose and the connection valve for any cracks or leaks. This mask is your most essential piece of equipment. At the altitudes you will be flying, the air is too thin to support life for more than a few seconds. This mask, and the oxygen system it connects to, is your lifeline. By the time you are fully kitted out, you feel like a different species. You have gained at least 50 pounds of gear, and you can barely move your arms and legs. Your vision is restricted by the helmet, your breathing is muffled by the mask, and your sense of touch is dulled by the thick gloves. You waddle out of the locker room with the other gunners, each of you a bulky, awkward parody of a man, moving with the slow, deliberate gait of a deep-sea diver. Outside, the misty rain is still falling. A fleet of canvas-topped trucks is waiting to take the crews out to their planes, which are parked on concrete hardstands scattered around the perimeter of the vast airfield. You climb into the back of one, a clumsy, graceless process that involves a lot of grunting, pushing, and awkward shoving. The truck bed is crowded with other similarly burdened men, and you are packed in shoulder to shoulder. The truck rumbles to life and starts the bumpy, jarring journey out to your assigned aircraft. Through the rain-streaked canvas flap at the back of the truck, you catch glimpses of the base. Other trucks, filled with other crews, are making the same journey. The ground crews are making their final checks on the bombers, swarming over the massive machines like ants on a beetle. The airfield is a hive of purposeful, controlled activity, a massive industrial operation dedicated to the single purpose of delivering death from the sky. Finally, the truck slows and pulls to a stop. This is your stop. You climb out, even more clumsily than you climbed in, and stand on the wet concrete. And there she is, your B-17, the weary angel. That is the name your crew has given her, painted in neat, white letters on her nose, next to a surprisingly well-rendered painting of a pin-up girl with tired eyes and angel wings. She doesn't look much like an angel at the moment. She is a massive, dull, olive-green machine, her paint chipped and faded. She is scarred and patched from previous missions, a testament to the violence she has endured. But she is your home in the sky. She is the machine that has brought you back from hell 24 times before. And you trust her. You have to. You stand on the wet, gray concrete of the hardstand, the light drizzle still falling, and you look up at the weary angel. Even after 24 missions, the sheer, brute size of the B-17 flying fortress still has the power to impress you. It is not a beautiful aircraft, not in the way a Spitfire or a Mustang is beautiful. It is not graceful or sleek. It is a big, slab-sided, brutally utilitarian piece of machinery. It was designed with one purpose in mind: to carry a very heavy load of bombs a very long way, to survive an incredible amount of punishment, and, most importantly, to come back. Its wingspan is over 100 feet, a massive, straight wing designed for stability at high altitude. It is powered by 4 massive Wright Cyclone radial engines, each one a complex and powerful masterpiece of pistons, cylinders, and plumbing, each one capable of producing 1,200 horsepower. The fuselage is a long, cylindrical tube, dotted with plexiglass windows and bristling with gun positions. You can see the twin .50 caliber machine guns of the top turret, manned by the flight engineer. You can see the single, flexible gun in the radio operator's compartment. You can see the 2 big guns in the open waist section, one on each side of the plane. You can see the tail gunner's position, the tail end Charlie, isolated at the very back of the aircraft. And then there is your own little world, the ball turret, hanging underneath the belly of the beast like a grotesque and vulnerable appendage. The ground crew is just finishing their work. A young mechanic, a kid of about 19 with a face permanently smudged with grease and oil, gives your pilot, Steve, a casual thumbs up. "She's all yours, Skipper," he shouts over the rumble of a nearby engine. "Gassed up, bombed up, and ready to fly." He says it with a practiced nonchalance that belies the immense, life-or-death responsibility of his work. You know that he and his team have been working all night in the cold and the rain, checking every wire, every fuel line, every control surface. A single loose bolt, a poorly secured fuel cap, a moment of inattention, and 10 men could die. You feel a surge of gratitude for these unseen, unsung heroes of the air war. You begin your own pre-flight walk-around, a solemn ritual that every crew member performs before every mission. It is partly a practical check, a last look for anything obviously wrong, a flat tire, a leak, a loose panel. But it is also partly superstition, a way of making peace with the machine, of paying your respects before you place your life in its cold, metal hands. You run a gloved hand along the aluminum skin of the fuselage. It is cold to the touch and slick with rainwater. You can see where shrapnel from a previous mission over Bremen tore a jagged line of holes along the side of the plane. The holes have since been patched over with fresh sheets of aluminum, the new rivets standing out bright and clean against the faded paint. Each one of those patches tells a story, a memory of a moment of heart-stopping terror that was somehow survived. Your final check is of your own domain, your office for the day, the Sperry Ball turret. You have to crouch down on the wet concrete to get a good look at it. It is a marvel of compact engineering and a nightmare of human ergonomics. It is a sphere, just over 3 feet in diameter, constructed of a metal frame and thick, curved panels of plexiglass. To get inside, you first have to use a control inside the plane to retract the twin .50 caliber machine guns so they are pointing straight down. Then, you open a small, narrow hatch on the back of the sphere, a hatch that is barely big enough to squeeze your shoulders through. And then, you have to contort your body, burdened as it is with all your flight gear, into a space that was clearly not designed with the comfort of a fully grown man in mind. Once you are inside, you are locked into a fetal position. You lie on your back, with your head and shoulders propped up against a small, padded rest. You look out at the world through the plexiglass dome between your own feet. Your hands grip 2 control handles, which you use to aim and fire the guns. Your feet rest on 2 metal plates that also serve as a rudimentary gun sight. It is a cramped, lonely, and incredibly vulnerable place to be. You are completely separated from the rest of the crew, your only connection to them the crackle of the intercom in your headphones and the thin, vital oxygen hose that snakes its way into your mask. If the plane has to make a wheels-up belly landing, you are the first part of the aircraft to make contact with the ground. It is a grim and recurring thought, one that you have learned to push to the back of your mind, but one that never truly goes away. You carefully check the ammunition feed for your 2 machine guns. The long, heavy belts of .50 caliber rounds, each bullet as thick as your thumb, have to be loaded perfectly into the feed chutes. The slightest twist or kink in the belt can cause the guns to jam, and a jammed gun in the middle of a fighter attack is a death sentence. You check your oxygen supply, making sure the connection valve is tight and the hose is free of any obstructions. You check the intercom jack, plugging your helmet cord in and out to make sure the connection is solid. And you check the manual crank, a small, T-shaped handle located near your right hip. This is your last resort. If the plane's electrical system fails, taking the turret's power with it, you would have to use this crank to manually rotate the turret into a position where you could open the hatch and escape. The thought of being trapped in this tiny, transparent sphere, a prisoner in your own weapon, is a constant, low-level fear that hums just beneath the surface of your consciousness. The time for checks and quiet contemplation is over. Steve's voice, clear and commanding, cuts through the air. "All right, boys, let's go to work." The crew begins the clumsy process of climbing aboard the B-17. It is not a dignified entry. You enter through a small, rectangular hatch located near the tail of the plane, on the right side of the fuselage. You have to haul yourself up, grabbing onto the edge of the hatch and pulling your heavy, gear-laden body inside, into the dark, metallic cavern of the aircraft. The inside of the bomber is not what people back home imagine from the newsreels and the patriotic movies. There are no comfortable seats, no open, airy spaces. It is a cramped, cluttered, and purely functional environment. It is filled with ammunition boxes, spare parts, oxygen tanks, and a bewildering web of control cables and hydraulic lines that run the length of the fuselage. The floor, for much of the plane, is just a narrow 24-inch wide catwalk that runs through the open bomb bay. A single misstep could send you tumbling down onto the bomb bay doors, or, if they were open, into the empty sky below. Everything smells of oil, hydraulic fluid, and that faint, sharp, metallic scent of cold aluminum. You make your way forward, squeezing past the waist gun positions, to your station just aft of the radio room. This is where you will stay until it is time to get into the ball turret, usually just before you reach enemy territory. You begin the laborious but essential process of plugging yourself in. You connect your intercom cord to a jack on the wall of the fuselage. You connect your oxygen hose to a port on the main oxygen line. And you connect the plug for your electrically heated suit to a small power outlet. You are now tethered to the aircraft, a part of its complex circulatory and nervous system. You settle onto a small, uncomfortable metal seat, the minutes ticking by. The "hurry up and wait" philosophy of the Army is in full effect. You are all geared up, on the plane, ready to go, but the signal to start engines has not yet been given. The crew engages in the usual pre-flight banter, a stream of nervous jokes, good-natured insults, and half-true stories, all of it a well-practiced ritual designed to keep the crushing weight of fear and anxiety at bay. You hear Charlie, the co-pilot, begin his tuneless whistling over the intercom, and you can't help but smile inside your oxygen mask. It is an annoying sound, but it is a familiar sound. It is the sound of your crew, your family in this strange, violent, temporary world. Then, the signal comes. A green flare, fired from the control tower, arcs gracefully across the gray, overcast sky. It is the signal to start engines. Steve's voice comes over the intercom. All business now, calm and professional. "All right, checklist. Starting number 3. There is a moment of silence, and then you hear a cough, a sputter, and then the starboard inner engine, number 3, catches with a deafening, ground-shaking roar. The entire airframe begins to vibrate, a deep, resonant shudder that you feel in your teeth, in your bones, in the very core of your being. One by one, the other 3 massive engines come to life, each adding its own powerful voice to the thunderous chorus. The noise is incredible, overwhelming. It is not just a sound, it is a physical force that presses in on you from all sides. Conversation, even shouting, becomes impossible. From this moment on, until the engines are shut down again in England many hours from now, your world will be dominated by the constant, unceasing, mind-numbing drone of the 4 Wright cyclones. The weary angel begins to move, lurching forward as Steve releases the brakes. She taxis slowly from her hardstand, her big tires splashing through the puddles on the concrete, and joins a long, slow-moving line of other B-17s, all of them inching their way toward the main runway like a herd of colossal, prehistoric beasts. Looking out a small, circular window in the fuselage, you see a seemingly endless procession of bombers. It is an awesome, intimidating display of American industrial power. Hundreds of identical machines and thousands of men, all moving with a single, deadly purpose. But as you watch them, a somber thought intrudes. You know that not all of these planes will be coming back today. The statistics are grim, and they are not on your side. You try to push the thought away, to focus on the task at hand, but the image of the empty cots in the Nissen huts is a hard one to shake. Finally, after what seems like an eternity of slow, stop-and-go taxiing, it is your turn. The weary angel swings onto the end of the main runway and pauses for a moment, gathering herself. Steve's voice comes over the intercom again, a calm litany as he runs through the final pre-takeoff checklist. Controls: free and clear. Flaps: set for takeoff. Trim tabs: set. Propellers: full increase. Instruments: checked. His voice is a steady, reassuring presence in the midst of the roaring chaos of the engines. Then, the final words. Here we go. He pushes the 4 throttle levers smoothly forward to their stops. The 4 engines scream to their maximum power. The plane surges forward, pressing you back hard into your uncomfortable metal seat. The acceleration is immense. The bomber rumbles and shakes as it hurtles down the runway, gathering speed. For a moment, it feels as if this massive, heavy machine, laden with thousands of gallons of fuel and thousands of pounds of bombs, will never leave the ground, that it will simply run out of runway and crash into the fields beyond. But then, just as you think it is impossible, you feel a subtle shift, a lightness, a moment of grace, as the heavy wheels lift off the wet English soil. You are airborne. The plane climbs, banking slowly to the east, away from the base. Below you, the patchwork of green and brown English fields and the small, toy-like villages shrink away, disappearing into the gray mist. As you gain altitude, the mission truly begins. The first and most critical task is to form up with the rest of the group. This is a long, tedious, and surprisingly dangerous process. Your squadron of 12 planes has to find the other squadrons in your bomb group, and your group has to find the other groups that make up your combat wing. It is a slow, painstaking aerial ballet, as hundreds of bombers, each taking off from a different airfield across East Anglia, gradually assemble into a vast, sky-filling formation, the combat box. This formation is your best, and perhaps only, defense against the German fighters. It is designed for mutual defense, with the 10 machine guns of each bomber positioned to cover its neighbors, creating a dense, three-dimensional field of interlocking fire. But flying in such close proximity, wingtip to wingtip, is incredibly dangerous. A moment of inattention from a pilot, a sudden patch of unexpected turbulence, a mechanical failure, and 2 10-ton aircraft could collide, sending 20 men to their deaths. The pilots are under immense strain, their hands and feet constantly making minute adjustments to throttles, rudders, and ailerons to maintain their precise position in the sky. As the bomber continues to climb, higher and higher, the world outside the small windows undergoes a dramatic transformation. You leave the gray, damp, miserable English morning behind and emerge into a different world. You break through the thick layer of clouds and into the brilliant, clear, sunlit sky of the upper atmosphere. The sun is dazzlingly bright, its light reflecting off the endless, undulating white landscape of the cloudtops below. It is a scene of incredible, almost spiritual beauty, a serene and majestic world that seems a million miles away from the mud, the rain, and the misery of the base. But the beauty is deceptive, and it is deadly. With the altitude comes the cold. The real cold. The temperature gauge in the fuselage shows the outside air temperature plummeting down to 20 degrees below zero. Then 30. Then 40. The thin aluminum skin of the fuselage offers virtually no insulation against this brutal, stratospheric cold. It is a physical presence, a relentless, invasive enemy that finds its way through every layer of your clothing. You feel it in your bones, a deep, persistent, numbing ache. You reach down and fumble for the plug of your heated suit, jamming it into the outlet on the wall. You pray that it will work today. After a moment, you feel a welcome, spreading warmth across your back and chest. It is a small island of comfort in an ocean of cold. But your feet, encased in their massive leather and sheepskin boots, remain stubbornly numb. You wiggle your toes inside the boots, trying to get the blood flowing, but they already feel like distant, unresponsive blocks of ice. A delicate, crystalline layer of frost begins to form on the inside of the plexiglass windows. Your own warm, moist breath freezes instantly on the cold rubber of your oxygen mask, creating a small, crusty, uncomfortable ring of ice around your lips. Now comes the part of the pre-combat flight that you dread the most. It is time to get into the ball turret. You pick up your microphone and speak into the intercom, your voice slightly muffled by the mask. Ball turret to pilot. I'm going into the ball now. Steve's voice crackles back in your headphones. Roger that. Take your time. You begin the awkward, contorted process of entering your tiny, spherical world. You slide open the small hatch on the floor of the fuselage, revealing the dark, cramped interior of the turret below. You swing your legs in, feeling for the small metal footrests. Then, somehow, you have to fold the rest of your body, your bulky, gear-laden torso, into the cramped sphere. It is like trying to stuff a mattress into a mailbox. The hatch closes above you with a solid, final-sounding thud, sealing you into your isolated world. The turret motor whirs, and you feel yourself being lowered from the relative safety of the fuselage and into the vast, empty space beneath the bomber. You lock into position, and you are now hanging in the sky, with nothing but a thin, curved layer of plexiglass between you and a 5-mile drop to the frozen clouds below. The view from the ball turret is both breathtaking and terrifying. You can see the entire world spread out below you, a vast, curving map of white clouds. Through breaks in the cloud cover, you can catch glimpses of the dark gray slate of the North Sea. You can see the other bombers of your formation, flying in perfect, disciplined rows above and around you. But you are also completely, utterly alone. The deafening roar of the engines is slightly muffled down here, replaced by the high-pitched, whistling rush of the wind against your plexiglass sphere and the constant, low creak and groan of the turret mechanism as you rotate it, scanning the empty sky. This is how you will spend the next 8 or 9 hours of your life. Curled in a tight, uncomfortable ball, freezing cold, staring into the vast, empty, hostile sky, waiting. You are waiting for the flak. You are waiting for the fighters. You are waiting for something to happen in the long, drawn-out, agonizingly boring prelude to a few minutes of sheer, unadulterated, mind-shattering terror. The boredom, in its own way, is as much of a challenge as the fear. You have to stay alert. You have to keep your eyes moving, constantly scanning every quadrant of the sky for the tiny black specks that could resolve into enemy fighters. Your eyes ache from the strain and from the relentless glare of the sun on the white clouds. Your body aches from being held in the same cramped, unnatural position for hours on end. And the cold, the relentless, seeping, inescapable cold, is your constant companion, a malevolent presence that saps your strength and dulls your senses. The flight across the North Sea is a lesson in the peculiar nature of time in a combat zone. It is a period of immense, soul-crushing boredom, and yet it is also a period of profound, gut-wrenching tension. Time seems to both stretch and compress. The minutes crawl by with an agonizing slowness, each one a small lifetime of cold and vibration. Yet the hours seem to disappear in a blur of anxious waiting. You have been in the air for nearly 2 hours, and for every second of that time, you have been trapped in this tiny, freezing sphere, a prisoner in your own weapon. Your world has shrunk to the dimensions of the ball turret. It is a world of cold metal, curved plexiglass, and the complex, oily smell of the machine guns that are your only companions. You are lying on your back, your body contorted into a tight, uncomfortable fetal position. Your knees are bent, your feet resting on the metal plates that serve as your gun sight. Your head and shoulders are propped up on a small, thinly padded rest, forcing you to look out at the world from between your own legs. Every muscle in your body aches with a low, persistent throb. Your back, pressed against the hard, cold curve of the turret's frame, feels like it is slowly being ground into dust. Your neck is stiff from the constant strain of holding your head at an unnatural angle. You try to shift your position, to find some small measure of comfort, but there is nowhere to go. You are locked in place, a human component in a machine of war. The cold is your most constant and intimate enemy. It is a physical presence, a relentless, invasive force that seems to have a will of its own. Your electrically heated suit, your supposed shield against the brutal cold of the stratosphere, is failing in its usual, creatively malevolent way. The wires in your left glove have, as you suspected they might, shorted out completely. Your left hand is now a useless, numb club. You can see it, you can tell your fingers to move, but the feeling is gone, replaced by a deep, worrying cold that feels like it is seeping into the very bones of your hand. You try flexing your fingers, clenching them into a fist and then releasing them, a desperate attempt to generate some internal heat, to remind the blood that it is supposed to be flowing. But the effort is immense, and the result is negligible. The hand remains a foreign object, a piece of frozen meat attached to your wrist. Meanwhile, a small, localized war is being waged on your right thigh. The heating wires in that section of the suit have apparently decided to bunch together, creating a hot spot. It started as a pleasant warmth, a welcome sensation in the overwhelming cold. But it has slowly intensified, moving from warmth to heat, and now to a searing, painful burn. It feels as if someone is holding a hot iron against your leg. You squirm, trying to shift the fabric of the suit, to move the hot spot, but your movements are restricted by the cramped confines of the turret. The pain is sharp and insistent, a focused point of agony in the general misery of your physical state. You are simultaneously freezing and burning, a walking, or rather, a curled-up, paradox of thermal suffering. You try to distract yourself from the physical discomfort by focusing on your job. Your job is to see. You are the eyes in the belly of the beast, responsible for scanning the vast, empty sky below the formation, watching for the tiny black specks that could resolve into enemy fighters. You grip the two control handles, your right hand, thankfully still warm, responding to your commands. You begin the slow, methodical process of scanning. You press the control handle to the left, and the turret responds with a low, hydraulic whir, rotating smoothly on its axis. You move your gaze with the turret, your eyes tracing a slow, deliberate arc across the brilliant, empty blue of the sky. You scan from the 9 o'clock position to the 6 o'clock position, your eyes straining to pick out any movement, any anomaly. Then you reverse the process, scanning from 6 o'clock back to 9. Then you manipulate the other control, tilting the guns and your viewpoint up and down, scanning the vertical plane. It is a slow, repetitive, mind-numbing task. The sky is vast and empty. The sun, a cold, distant disk in the high-altitude sky, reflects off the endless, undulating sea of white clouds below, creating a blinding glare. You pull down the tinted visor on your helmet, which helps a little, but the strain on your eyes is immense. After a while, they begin to burn, and you have to force yourself to blink, to keep them from drying out in the cold, thin air. The only sounds that penetrate your little world are the constant, unchanging drone of your own engines, a deep, resonant hum that vibrates through every inch of the aircraft, and the high-pitched, whistling rush of the wind against your plexiglass sphere. The roar of the 4 right cyclones is a physical presence, a pressure on your eardrums, a vibration in your teeth and bones. It is the soundtrack to your life, the constant background noise against which the drama of combat is played out. You are connected to the 9 other men in the plane only by the thin, fragile thread of the intercom system. You hear the occasional crackle in your headphones, a burst of static, a muffled cough. It is a comfort, a reminder that you are not entirely alone in this cold, hostile emptiness. But it also serves to emphasize your isolation. You are a satellite, a separate entity, hanging in space beneath the main body of the aircraft. You have to maintain a strict discipline over your own body and mind. You consciously regulate your breathing, taking slow, deep, regular breaths of the cool, dry, slightly rubbery-tasting oxygen from your mask. You have seen what anoxia, oxygen starvation, does to a man at this altitude. It is a silent, insidious killer. The first stage is a feeling of euphoria, of giddy lightheadedness. You might feel warm and comfortable. You might start singing or telling jokes over the intercom. Then your judgment begins to fail. Your vision narrows, tunneling down to a small circle. Your movements become clumsy and uncoordinated. And then, without any further warning, you simply and quietly pass out and die. So you watch your oxygen gauge with an obsessive focus. It is a small, simple dial, but it is the most important instrument in your world. You check the thin, rubbery hose that connects your mask to the main oxygen line, making sure it is not kinked or blocked with ice. Breathing is no longer an unconscious act. It is a deliberate, life-sustaining task. To combat the crushing boredom, you let your mind drift, but you are careful not to let it drift too far. You think about home, about your family. You conjure up an image of your mother in the kitchen, her hands dusted with flour as she kneads dough for bread. You can almost smell the yeast and the warmth of the oven. You picture your father, sitting in his favorite armchair after dinner, reading the newspaper, the smoke from his pipe curling up towards the ceiling. You think about your dog, a scruffy terrier mix named Patches, and the way he would greet you at the door, his whole body wiggling with excitement. These thoughts are a comfort, a small, warm, private space you can retreat to in the middle of all this cold, mechanical hostility. But you cannot linger there for too long. You have to stay focused on the here and now. Your life, and the lives of the 9 other men on this plane, depend on your vigilance. After an eternity that the clock on your instrument panel insists was only an hour and 45 minutes, the navigator's voice crackles over the intercom. It is Mike, the serious young man from Boston, and his voice is flat and professional, but you can hear the underlying tension. Approaching the Dutch coast. Enemy territory in 5 minutes. A wave of adrenaline, cold and sharp, cuts through the fog of your fatigue. This is it. The waiting is almost over. The casual chatter on the intercom ceases instantly. The atmosphere inside the plane, which had been one of bored resignation, now becomes one of taut, focused anticipation. You can feel it, even down here in your isolated sphere. It is a collective tensing of muscles, a sharpening of senses, a silent, shared preparation for what is to come. You swivel your turret with renewed intensity, your eyes scanning the sky with a desperate focus. The Luftwaffe could be anywhere now. They could be lurking in the sun, waiting to dive down on you with their cannons blazing. They could be climbing up from below, appearing suddenly and without warning. Through a break in the clouds, you see it. The coastline of Holland. It is a thin, dark, irregular line separating the gray slate of the North Sea from the flat, green and brown patchwork of the land. It looks so peaceful from up here, so ordinary. A landscape of small fields, neat little houses with red-tiled roofs, and thin, silver ribbons of canals. It is hard to believe that down there, on that peaceful-looking stretch of land, there are men and machines whose sole purpose is to shoot you out of the sky. The minutes tick by, each one a small eternity. Still nothing. The initial surge of adrenaline begins to fade, replaced once again by the dull ache of tension. You have crossed the coast. You are now officially in enemy territory. Every second that you are over this land, your chances of survival decrease. You are a trespasser here, an unwelcome intruder, and the enemy will do everything in their power to make you pay for your transgression. Then it comes, not from your own eyes, but from the voice of another crewman, sharp and urgent in your headphones. It is the top turret gunner, the flight engineer, a man named Frank. His voice is high-pitched with excitement and fear. Bandits, 2 o'clock high. Your heart lurches in your chest. The boredom is definitively over. The terror begins. You try to swivel your turret, to get your eyes on the threat, but they are attacking from above and to the right, out of your field of view. You hear the sound you have been dreading, the sound that has haunted your dreams. It is the sound of the other guns on your plane opening up, a furious, hammering, metallic chatter that is completely different from the steady, monotonous drone of the engines. The entire airframe seems to vibrate with the force of the gunfire. The air is suddenly filled with tracers, bright, incandescent lines of red and white, streaking through the sky around you. You can see them from your turret, a swarm of angry, glowing hornets. They seem to be moving with a terrifying slowness, and yet they are traveling at hundreds of miles per hour. And then you see them. 2 German fighters, Focke-Wulf 190s, diving through the top of the formation, their wings winking with the bright flashes of their 20mm cannons. They are impossibly fast and agile, painted in a mottled camouflage of gray and green, with the stark, black crosses of the Luftwaffe on their wings and fuselage. They look exactly like what they are, sleek, efficient, beautiful killing machines. They flash past your field of vision in a heartbeat, a blur of motion and menace. You instinctively grip your control handles, swinging your guns to track the second one as it dives away below the formation. You squeeze the trigger button on the handle, and your 2.50 caliber machine guns roar to life. The sound is deafening, even through your helmet. The vibration is so intense that it shakes your entire body, rattling your teeth and your skull. The smell of cordite, sharp and acrid, fills your tiny sphere, a smell that is more potent and more real than any other smell in the world. You fire a long, desperate burst, trying to lead the fighter, trying to place your bullets in its path, praying that you will hit something vital: the engine, the cockpit, the pilot. They are gone as quickly as they appeared, diving away into the clouds below. An eerie, ringing silence descends, broken only by the familiar drone of the engines. You scan the sky, your hands slick with sweat inside your thick, cold gloves. Your heart is pounding against your ribs like a trapped bird. Over the intercom, the damage reports start coming in, a quick, staccato roll call of survival. Top turret to pilot, no hits. Radio room, all clear. Waist to pilot, all clear here. Tail to pilot, they put a few holes in my vertical stabilizer, but nothing serious. So far, so good. The weary Angel is intact. She has been blooded, but she is not wounded. But not everyone in the formation has been so lucky. To your left, about 200 yards away, you see a B-17 from another squadron, the one that was flying on your wing. It is trailing a thick, greasy plume of black smoke from its number 2 engine, the one closest to the fuselage on the port side. It is losing altitude, its nose dipping slightly as it struggles to maintain its speed. It is beginning to fall out of the formation. You watch in a state of cold, detached horror as it slips further and further behind. A lone, crippled bomber is a dead man walking. The fighters will be on it like wolves on a wounded deer. It is the brutal, unwritten law of the air war. You see 2 small, white flowers blossom in the sky behind the stricken plane. Parachutes. Then another. But there should be 10. 10 men on that plane. You count again. 3. Only 3. The plane continues its long, slow, graceful spiral downward, the smoke getting thicker and blacker, until it disappears into the solid white blanket of the clouds below. You feel a wave of nausea, of sickness in the pit of your stomach. You knew those guys. Not well, but you knew them. You drank with them at the pub on the base last night. You shared a cigarette with their tail gunner before the briefing this morning. Now they are gone, and there is absolutely nothing you can do about it. You just have to keep flying. You just have to keep fighting. You just have to keep your eyes on the sky. The attacks from the German fighters continue for what feels like an eternity, but in reality, is probably no more than an hour. It is a series of short, vicious, terrifying encounters, separated by brief periods of eerie, nerve-shredding quiet. The German pilots are good. They are experienced and aggressive, and they press their attacks with a suicidal courage that is both terrifying and, in a strange, detached way, admirable. You fire your guns until the barrels are so hot that you can feel the heat through your thick gloves. You reload the ammunition belts, your numb, clumsy fingers fumbling with the heavy, metallic links. You see another B-17, this one from a different squadron, take a direct hit in the wing from a 20mm cannon shell. The wing simply folds up, as if it is made of paper, and the massive plane cartwheels out of the sky, disintegrating into a ball of brilliant orange flame and thick, greasy black smoke. You watch for parachutes, a grim, instinctive habit, but this time, there are none. 10 more men, gone in the blink of an eye. The intercom is a constant, chaotic stream of information, a symphony of fear and professionalism. Bandits, 9 o'clock low. Watch out, one coming in from the tail. Somebody get that guy at 5 o'clock. You are no longer an individual, a young man from a small town in America. You are a component in a 10-man weapon system, a pair of eyes and a pair of guns, all working together, all guided by the calm, steady, impossibly reassuring voice of your pilot, Steve, who is flying the plane through this maelstrom of fire and metal with a skill that borders on artistry. Then, just as suddenly as they appeared, the fighters are gone. They have run low on fuel or ammunition, and they have to return to their bases to rearm and refuel. An eerie, profound quiet descends, broken only by the familiar, monotonous drone of the 4 engines. The tension remains, a coiled, venomous snake in the pit of your stomach, but the immediate, heart-pounding, mind-numbing terror recedes, leaving you feeling hollowed out, shaky, and strangely lightheaded. You take a long, shuddering breath, the cold, dry oxygen filling your lungs. You are still alive, but you are not safe yet. You are approaching the target. And that means you are approaching the flak. The navigator's voice, Mike's voice, comes over the intercom. His tone is grim, devoid of any emotion. 10 minutes to the IP. The initial point. This is the spot in the sky where you will begin the bomb run. It is, without question, the most dangerous part of the entire mission. For the next several minutes, the entire formation will have to fly straight and level, with no evasive maneuvers, to give the bombardiers a stable platform from which to aim their Norden bomb sights. You will become a perfect, predictable, slow-moving target for the hundreds of anti-aircraft guns on the ground. You look down through the curved plexiglass of your turret. The clouds have cleared completely now, and you can see the German landscape spread out below you like a vast, detailed map. It is a patchwork of dark green forests and brown, fallow fields, all of it dusted with a light, delicate layer of snow. Then you see the target in the distance. Schweinfurt. It doesn't look like much from 5 miles up. Just a small city, a dense cluster of buildings on the bank of a river. But you know that small, insignificant-looking cluster of buildings is surrounded by one of the heaviest concentrations of flak guns in the entire Third Reich. As you get closer, you see it. It starts as just a few innocent-looking, soft, black puffs of smoke in the sky ahead of the formation. They appear suddenly, silently, as if by magic. Then there are more, and more, until the sky ahead of you is filled with them. It is a dense, ugly, 3-dimensional cloud of black smoke and death. It is the flak. Each one of those black puffs is an 88mm anti-aircraft shell exploding, sending hundreds of jagged, red-hot pieces of metal tearing through the air at supersonic speeds. Steve's voice comes over the intercom. It is tense, but still steady. Okay, boys, here we go. Straight and level for the run. The plane, which had been gently swaying and dipping as Steve made small corrections, now locks into a perfectly straight, perfectly level flight path. It feels unnatural, wrong. You are flying directly into that black, churning cloud. Immediately, you hear the sound. It is a sound unlike any other. It is the sound of shrapnel hitting the aluminum skin of the fuselage. It sounds like someone is throwing handfuls of gravel against a tin roof, a constant, sharp, metallic patter. Then comes a much louder sound, a loud, resonant bang, and the entire plane shudders violently, as if it has been struck by a giant, invisible hammer. A shell has exploded right next to you. The concussion is a physical blow. You can feel it in your chest, a deep, jarring impact that takes your breath away. You look out, your heart in your throat, and you see a new, jagged hole in the wing. A hole big enough to stick your head through. The intercom crackles to life. It is the bombardier, a young man named Leo. His voice is calm, focused, almost hypnotic. Bombardier to pilot. I have the target. On the run. The next few minutes are the longest, most terrifying of your entire life. The flak is relentless, unbelievable. The sky is no longer blue. It is a solid, churning wall of black explosions. The plane is bucking and shuddering, thrown about by the shockwaves of the nearby bursts. You can't shoot back. You can't take evasive action. You can't do anything. You just have to sit there and take it, curled up in your little glass and metal ball, a helpless, passive target, praying that the next shell doesn't have your name, your plane, your crew on it. You can hear the fear in the voices over the intercom now. Someone, you think it's the radio operator, is praying softly. A stream of Hail Marys whispered into his microphone. Someone else, one of the waist gunners, is cursing in a steady, monotonous, almost rhythmic stream. But through it all, cutting through the fear and the chaos, comes the calm, focused, almost detached voice of the bombardier, Leo, as he guides the plane to its destination. Left a little. Steady, Steve, hold it steady. Almost there, almost there. And then, the three most beautiful, most wonderful, most glorious words in the entire English language. Bombs away. You feel a sudden, violent lurch as the plane sheds its 10,000-pound load of high explosives. The weary angel feels suddenly, miraculously lighter, more agile. Steve's voice comes on the intercom immediately, sharp and commanding. Okay, let's get the hell out of here. He banks the plane hard, a steep, stomach-churning turn, away from the target, away from the worst of the flak. The long, agonizing, terrifying journey home has begun. The turn away from the target is a moment of pure, unadulterated, almost painful relief. You have done your job. You have dropped your bombs. Now, every second that passes, every revolution of the four propellers, is taking you one step closer to home, one step closer to the relative safety of England. But you are not safe yet. You are still hundreds of miles deep in enemy territory. You are flying in a damaged aircraft, and you have the ever-present threat of the German fighters returning to finish off the cripples. The first thing that happens after the turn is the damage report. Steve's voice, still calm but with an underlying edge of strain that was not there before, comes over the intercom. All right, everyone, check in. Report damage and injuries. The voices come back one by one, a quick, staccato roll call from around the plane. Top turret, all good, skipper. Radio room, got a few new holes in the fuselage, but I'm okay. Waist gunner 1, I'm fine, but Charlie's hit. The report from the other waist gunner sends a cold, hard jolt through the entire crew. Charlie, the co-pilot, the cheerful kid from Brooklyn who always whistles his stupid, comforting, off-key tune. The medic, who is also one of the waist gunners, a man named Gus, makes his way forward from the waist section to the cockpit. The plane is not designed for easy movement, especially in bulky flight gear. He has to squeeze past the ammunition boxes, clamber over the narrow, treacherous catwalk of the open bomb bay, all while the plane is still being buffeted by the lingering effects of the flak. The minutes stretch out, filled with a tense, waiting silence. The only sound is the steady, reassuring drone of the four engines. You wait, powerless and isolated in your little sphere, for news. Finally, Gus's voice comes back over the intercom. It is strained, and you can hear the effort in his breathing. He's got some shrapnel in his shoulder. It's bleeding pretty bad, but I think I can stop it. He's conscious, but he's in a lot of pain. Steve's voice cuts in, all business. Okay, Gus. Keep him warm. Do what you can. I'll need you to help me on the controls if things get rough. The thought of flying this big, wounded bird all the way back to England with a badly injured co-pilot is a terrifying one. But Steve sounds as if he is just discussing a minor mechanical inconvenience. His calmness is a force in itself, a rock of stability that holds the rest of the crew together. Then it is your turn to report. Ball turret to pilot. My hydraulic lines are shot to hell. I'm rotating on the manual crank. It's slow going. This is bad news. Without the hydraulic system, you cannot rotate the turret quickly enough to track and engage enemy fighters. You are, for all intents and purposes, a sitting duck. Worse, if you have to bail out, it will take you precious, life or death minutes to manually crank the turret into a position where you can open the hatch and escape. You try not to think about that. You just focus on the task at hand, your arms already aching as you turn the stiff, cold, incooperative crank, slowly, painstakingly, scanning the empty sky below. The formation is a ragged, shattered mess now. The neat, disciplined combat box that you flew in with on the way to the target has been torn apart by the flak and the fighter attacks. Planes are missing. You do a quick, grim count. Your squadron of 12 B-17s is down to 8. The group as a whole, which started with 36 planes, has lost at least 20, maybe more. That is 200 men. 200 lives, just gone. The sky that seemed so full and crowded on the way in now feels vast, empty, and lonely. The surviving planes clustered together for mutual protection, their engines straining. You can see the damage on the other aircraft. There is a B-17 with its entire tail section shredded, the rudder and elevators torn to ribbons. Miraculously, the tail gunner is still at his post, a tiny, heroic figure in the shattered remains of his position. You see another plane with a feathered propeller on its number 1 engine. The engine is dead, and its blades have been turned into the wind to reduce drag and prevent further damage. Every plane that is still in the air is scarred, wounded, battered. But they are still flying. The long flight home is a grim, grueling, miserable affair. The adrenaline of combat, the high-octane fuel that kept you going through the fear and the terror, has worn off completely. It has been replaced by a deep, profound, bone-aching exhaustion. The cold, which you barely noticed during the heat of the fight, returns with a vengeance. Your feet are completely numb now, 2 blocks of insensate ice at the ends of your legs. The burning patch on your thigh from the faulty heated suit has settled into a dull, throbbing, persistent ache. Every single muscle in your body complains from being held in the same cramped, unnatural position for so many hours. Your head hurts, a dull, pounding ache behind your eyes. Your eyes themselves burn from the strain of scanning the sky and from the glare of the sun. You feel a desperate, almost overwhelming craving for a cigarette, for a cup of hot, black coffee, for the simple, miraculous feeling of solid, unmoving ground beneath your feet. You have to fight a constant, silent battle against a creeping sense of despair. It would be so easy to give up, to let the cold and the exhaustion and the fear finally win. It would be so easy to just stop scanning the sky, to close your eyes for just a second. But you can't. You have to keep going. You have to keep watching. Your life, and the lives of the 9 other men on this plane, depend on it. So you do. You force your aching, burning eyes to keep moving, to keep scanning the empty blue. You force your tired, screaming arms to keep turning the manual crank. You talk to yourself, a low, continuous murmur inside your oxygen mask. You sing songs in your head, old, familiar tunes from the radio back home. You do multiplication tables, anything and everything you can think of to keep your mind sharp, to keep the thick, gray fog of fatigue at bay. The German fighters come back, just as you knew they would. They are like sharks that have scented blood in the water. They focus their attacks on the stragglers, the wounded planes that are struggling to keep up with the main formation. You watch, helpless and sickened, as they swarm a B-17 that has fallen behind. You see their cannon fire striking home, tearing big, ugly chunks out of the wing and the fuselage. You see it begin to burn, a small flicker of orange flame that quickly grows into a raging inferno. And then you see it explode. A silent, ugly, obscene flower of orange and black in the cold, indifferent blue of the sky. Your guns are useless. The attackers are too far away for you to engage. All you can do is watch, and pray that you are not next. Miraculously, they leave your group alone. Maybe they have run out of ammunition. Maybe they have achieved their kill quotas for the day. Whatever the reason, they peel away and head for home, leaving you to continue your slow, painful, lonely journey westward. The sun begins to sink toward the horizon, painting the clouds below in breathtaking shades of pink, orange, and gold. It is a beautiful sunset, but you are in no mood to appreciate its beauty. Every minute of daylight that passes means you will be landing in darkness, which is a far more dangerous proposition, especially in a damaged plane with an injured co-pilot. Then, after another eternity of cold and fear and exhaustion, you see it. The most beautiful sight in the entire world. Through a break in the clouds, you see the white cliffs of Dover. The English coast. You are almost home. A wave of relief, so powerful and so profound that it is almost painful, washes over you. You feel your throat tighten, and you have to bite your lip to keep from crying out. You are not going to die today. Over the intercom, you hear someone, you think it's one of the waist gunners, let out a single, ragged sob. No one comments on it. Everyone understands. The navigator gives Steve a new course, a heading that will take you to your home base at Thorpe Abbotts. The plane begins to descend, leaving the frigid, hostile altitudes behind. As you get lower, the air begins to warm up. The frost on the inside of your turret begins to melt, the small, delicate crystals turning into drops of cold water that drip onto your face and your uniform. Your numb feet begin to thaw, a process that is surprisingly, excruciatingly agonizing. The feeling returns in a wave of sharp, stabbing pins and needles. You can feel the plane getting ready for landing. The landing gear groans as it lowers into place. The flaps extend with a loud, hydraulic hiss. You finally get the order you have been waiting for all day. Bald turret to pilot, am I clear to come up? Clear to come up, Steve replies, his voice thick with fatigue. You begin the slow, arduous, painful process of manually cranking the turret back into a position where you can escape. Your arms feel like they are made of lead. Every muscle protests the movement. Finally, after what seems like an eternity, the turret is aligned. You push open the hatch and begin the clumsy, painful, awkward process of unfolding your stiff, aching body out of the sphere and back into the relative spaciousness of the fuselage. The relief of being able to stand up, to stretch your legs, is indescribable. You feel as if you have been reborn. You look around the inside of the plane. It is a wreck. The floor is littered with the brass casings of spent .50 caliber shells. There are new holes in the fuselage, jagged tears in the aluminum skin that let in streaks of the gray evening light. The air smells of cordite, of sweat, of hydraulic fluid, and of the sharp, antiseptic scent of the first aid kit that Gus used on Charlie. Charlie is lying on the floor of the radio room, wrapped in blankets. His face is pale and slick with sweat, his features etched with pain. But he is alive. You are all alive. You feel the bump and the screech of the wheels touching down on the wet runway. The weary angel is home. The plane rolls to a stop on its designated hardstand, and Steve cuts the engines. The sudden, profound silence is shocking. After 10 hours of constant, deafening, mind-numbing noise, the quiet feels unnatural, almost loud in its own way. The ground crew is already there, swarming the plane before the propellers have even stopped spinning. An ambulance, its red light flashing rhythmically in the growing twilight, is waiting nearby. The main hatch is thrown open, and the cool, damp English air, the same air that felt so miserable and oppressive this morning, now feels like the sweetest, most wonderful, most life-affirming air you have ever breathed. You climb down out of the plane, your legs shaky and unreliable under your own weight. You stumble on the last step, and one of the ground crewmen catches you, his hand firm on your arm. "Easy there, son," he says, his voice full of a gentle, paternal concern. "You're home." You stand on the solid, unmoving concrete, just for a moment, letting the feeling of being on the ground, of being safe, wash over you. You look back at the weary angel. She is battered and torn, leaking oil from one of her engines, her olive green skin peppered with hundreds of small, jagged holes. But she brought you back. She is a good ship. The medics carefully lift Charlie out of the plane and onto a stretcher. He manages a weak, pained smile as he is carried toward the waiting ambulance. "See you boys in the pub," he murmurs, his voice barely a whisper. "You know you won't. His war is over. He is one of the lucky ones. He is going home. The rest of you, the walking wounded, the survivors, are herded toward a waiting truck that will take you to debriefing. You are exhausted, you are filthy, you are emotionally and physically drained, but you cannot rest yet. The Army, in its infinite wisdom, wants its information while the mission is still fresh and raw in your mind." The debriefing room is another smoky, crowded, overheated hut. An intelligence officer, a clean-shaven captain who smells of soap and Old Spice and has clearly spent the day in a warm, comfortable office, sits you down at a small, wooden table. He offers you a shot of whiskey and a cup of coffee. You take both without hesitation. The whiskey burns a welcome, fiery trail down your throat. The coffee is hot and black and strong. He asks you a series of questions in a calm, detached, clinical voice. "How many enemy fighters did you see? What type were they? Did you notice any new markings or tactics? Did you see any other bombers from your group go down? At what location?" You try to answer as best you can, but your mind is a thick, soupy fog of fatigue. The images of the day are a jumbled, chaotic mess. Exploding planes, streaks of tracer fire, the terrified faces of the men who are now gone. You do your best to give him the cold, hard, objective facts he needs for his reports, but it feels like you are describing a movie you saw a long time ago, a story that happened to someone else. After what seems like an eternity, he is finally finished with you. You are dismissed. You are finally, truly, completely done for the day. You walk out of the debriefing hut and back into the cold, dark night. It is fully dark now, and the rain has started again, a fine, persistent drizzle that soaks you to the skin. You make your way slowly, stiffly, back to your own Nissen hut. The short walk feels like a journey of 1,000 miles. You push open the door and step inside. The hut is warm. Someone has stoked the coal stove in the center of the room. But it is also quiet. Too quiet. You look around at the rows of empty cots. The cots of the crew of the plane you saw go down in flames over Holland. Their belongings are still there, exactly as they left them this morning. A photograph of a smiling girl on a footlocker. A half-finished letter on a small, rickety table. A paperback book, its spine broken, lying open on a pillow. They were here this morning, laughing, joking, complaining about the food. Now they are just gone. A profound, soul-crushing weariness settles over you. A weariness that has nothing to do with physical fatigue. It is a weariness of the spirit. You don't have the energy to undress. You just pull off your heavy, mud-caked boots, letting them fall to the concrete floor with a loud thud. You collapse onto your cot, the springs groaning in protest. You pull the rough, scratchy wool blanket over your body. You lie there in the semi-darkness, listening to the rain drumming a soft, steady rhythm on the curved metal roof. You should be hungry, but you can't think of eating. You should be relieved to be alive, but all you feel is a vast, empty numbness. You close your eyes, but the images of the day are burned onto the inside of your eyelids. The black puffs of the flak, the winking cannons of the fighters, the terrible, silent beauty of a burning plane falling out of the sky. You know that sleep will not come easily tonight. And you know that in a day, or 2, or 3, you will have to get up and do it all over again. And again, and again, until you finish your tour of 25 missions. Or until your luck finally, inevitably, runs out. You pull the blanket tighter around your shoulders, a small, futile defense against the cold that seems to have settled deep inside you. A cold that has nothing to do with the English weather. You focus on the sound of the rain, a steady, rhythmic, monotonous drumming. It is a sound that is blessedly, wonderfully normal. You hold onto that sound as if it is a lifeline, letting it slowly, slowly wash away the noise and the terror of the day.